Remember that poster on your bedroom wall? The one you kissed goodnight in 1967? What if those guys never touched an instrument on the record you played until the grooves wore out? What if the drummer in your favorite band had never sat behind a drum kit before the photo shoot? What if the bass player you idolize couldn't even tell you which end of the instrument to hold? What if the voice you sang along to at every school dance belonged to someone you've never seen? This wasn't a rare scandal. This was how the music industry worked. A small group of anonymous studio musicians, maybe 30 people in Los Angeles, played on virtually every hit record you bought between 1962 and 1972. That guitar solo you air guitared in your bedroom, played by someone whose name you've never heard. That drum fill you tapped on your steering wheel, the same guy played it on hundreds of songs you thought were by different bands. Today, we're counting down 15 famous acts who never played on their own hit records. Some were in on the secret, some found out the hard way, and some paid with everything. If you danced to these songs at your senior prom, bought these albums with your paper route money, or argued with your parents about this music being too loud, stick around, because the truth might change how you hear every record in your collection. Number 15, Gary Lewis and the Playboys.
To make her stay here. Words of love to her.
Gary Lewis had famous blood. His father was comedian Jerry Lewis. But when producer Snuff Garrett heard the Playboys audition, he made a brutal decision. He didn't use them at all. For this diamond ring in January 1965, session musician Leon Russell arranged and played keyboards. Drummer Hal Blaine, a name you'll hear many times today, played drums. The Wrecking Crew handled every instrument. But here's the really strange part. Session singer Ron Hicklin recorded the basic vocal track first. Then Gary's voice was overdubbed on top, layered and double-tracked until, as Garrett later admitted, he sounded like Mario Lanza. The song hit number 1. When Ed Sullivan demanded a live performance, Gary sang along to pre-recorded tracks while the Playboys pretended to play, reportedly the first time a song was lip-synced on The Sullivan Show. Number 14, The Association.
You wonder if this heart.
Here's the cruelest irony on our list. The Association were classically trained musicians. Terry Kirkman had reportedly played with Frank Zappa. These guys could actually play. The label didn't care. Producer Bones Howe told them flatly, "If you want me to do your record, I have to have these guys," meaning the Wrecking Crew. Cherish spent 3 weeks at number 1. Windy held the top spot for 4 weeks. Never My Love became the second most played song on American radio in the entire 20th century. The Association didn't play a note. When they opened the Monterey Pop Festival in June 1967, they performed live with their own instruments, proving they could play. But by then, the Wrecking Crew had already created their legacy. Number 13, the Grassroots.
When I think of all the worries people seem to find and how they're in.
If you bought a Grassroots album in 1966, then another in 1968, you might have owned records by 3 completely different bands. It started as a pure studio creation, songwriters P.F. Sloan and Steve Barry recording with session musicians. No band existed. When the songs got radio interest, they recruited a San Francisco group to be the Grassroots. That band quit when told session musicians would still play on their records. The third lineup included Creed Bratton. Yes, the same Creed Bratton who later played himself on NBC's The Office. Carol Kay from the Wrecking Crew played that famous opening bass line on Midnight Confessions. 21 charting singles, 20 million records sold, at least 3 completely different groups of musicians. Number 12, Ohio Express.
I love you, mercy, mercy. Oh, you know you're such.
Remember Yummy Yummy Yummy? That bubblegum earworm that got stuck in your head all summer of '68? The Ohio Express touring the country that year had nothing to do with the record. Producers Casonets and Katz ran a hit factory where songs, singers, and band names were interchangeable. Singer Joey Levine recorded demos with studio musicians. The label released them SIIS. The touring Ohio Express heard their own single on the radio for the first time, just like you did. Here's how shameless it got. The B-side was reportedly an instrumental track from a different fake band song played backward. Yummy 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 hit number 4 and sold over 1 million copies. Somewhere, a band from Mansfield, Ohio was pretending they'd made it. Number 11, the Partridge Family.
I'm sleeping and right in the middle of a good dream. Like all at once I wake up.
Every Friday night, millions of families gathered around the TV to watch the Partridges pile into that psychedelic bus. You probably had the lunchbox, maybe the board game. Definitely opinions about whether David or Danny was cooler. Of those 7 people on the bus, only 2 made any sound on the records. David Cassidy and Shirley Jones provided vocals, and initially even Cassidy didn't sing. The Ron Hicklin singers recorded everything until producer Wes Farrell discovered Cassidy could actually carry a tune. Danny Bonaduce, Susan Day, never touched an instrument or sang a note on any recording. The Wrecking Crew played everything. Hal Blaine on drums, Joe Osborne on bass, Tommy Tedesco on guitar. I Think I Love You hit number 1 for 3 weeks, selling over 5 million copies, outselling the Beatles' Let It Be. The franchise generated an estimated $500 million in merchandising. In 2010, David Cassidy reportedly challenged Danny Bonaduce to learn the bass lines. Bonaduce had never actually played. Number 10, Boney M. If you were anywhere near a disco in the late 70s, you heard Boney M.
A certain man in Russia long ago.
He was big and strong.
Rivers of Babylon, Daddy Cool, Rasputin. They sold over 100 million records, and half the group never made a sound. Producer Frank Farian sang all the male vocals himself. That deep bass voice you remember on Rasputin? Farian, not Bobby Farrell, the man you saw dancing on stage. Liz Mitchell and Marcia Barrett actually sang the female parts. But Farrell and Maisie Williams were pure performers, dancers who lip-sync. The difference between Boney M and others on this list, it was never really a secret. German teen magazine Bravo reportedly confirmed it in 1978. Nobody cared. In the disco era, the dancing mattered more than the playing. Bobby Farrell died December 30th, 2010 in St. Petersburg, 94 years to the day after Rasputin's assassination, in the same city where Rasputin died. Number 9, the Byrds. January 20th, 1965. The Byrds walked into Columbia Studios to record Mr. Tambourine Man. Producer Terry Melcher looked at them and made a ruthless call. Only one Byrd was good enough. Roger McGuinn played his 12-string Rickenbacker and sang lead. David Crosby and Gene Clark sang harmonies. Chris Hillman and Michael Clark were reportedly told to wait outside. The Wrecking Crew filled the gap. Hal Blaine on drums, Larry Knechtel on bass, Jerry Cole on rhythm guitar. An engineer accidentally double-compressed McGuinn's Rickenbacker, creating that famous jangly sound that defined folk rock. Mr. Tambourine Man hit number 1 on both sides of the Atlantic, the first Bob Dylan song to ever top a pop chart. But here's what separates the Byrds from others on this list. They fought to play their own instruments after that. Within months, they were recording everything themselves. The deception lasted exactly 1 single. Number 8, the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. Now, the Beach Boys were legitimate musicians. They played on their first 10 albums. Dennis Wilson was a real drummer. Carl Wilson was a real guitarist. This wasn't manufactured. But Pet Sounds, the album critics now call one of the greatest ever made, was different. When Brian Wilson envisioned Pet Sounds in early 1966, he needed something his bandmates couldn't deliver. He spent an unprecedented $70,000, over $600,000 in today's money, recording instrumental tracks with The Wrecking Crew, Hal Blaine on drums, Carol Kaye on bass for God Only Knows and Wouldn't It Be Nice, Glenn Campbell on guitar, nearly 40 session musicians across the sessions. The Beach Boys contributed their signature vocal harmonies, which remained essential. But the instruments you hear, that's not them. This wasn't deception, it was artistic vision. Brian Wilson heard sounds in his head that required the precision of musicians who could sight-read complex arrangements on demand. The Beach Boys couldn't do that. The Wrecking Crew could. Good Vibrations took 90 hours across 4 studios. It cost $50,000, the most expensive single ever recorded at that time. It hit #1 worldwide. Before we continue, drop your guess in the comments. Which band do you think is #1? Number 7, the Monkees.
What's it ring? And I ran, wipe the sleep out.
In 1965, TV producers placed an ad seeking 4 insane boys aged 17 to 21. 437 hopefuls auditioned, including Stephen Stills and Harry Nilsson. The 4 chosen, Mickey Dolenz, Davy Jones, Michael Nesmith, Peter Tork, were hired to add vocals to completed backing tracks. Music supervisor Don Kirshner maintained total control. The Wrecking Crew played everything. Hal Blaine on drums, Carol Kaye on bass, Glenn Campbell on guitar. The results were staggering. Last Train to Clarksville hit #1. I'm a Believer spent 7 weeks at #1. Their first 4 albums all reached #1 in a single year, something no other act has ever matched. They reportedly outsold the Beatles and Rolling Stones combined in 1967. The revolt came in January 1967 when they discovered Kirshner had rush-released more of the Monkees without telling them. They had to buy their own album from a record store. At a confrontation in Kirshner's hotel bungalow, Michael Nesmith reportedly punched a hole in the wall and told Kirshner's attorney, "That could have been your face." Nesmith went public in the Saturday Evening Post. "Tell the world we don't record our own music." Kirshner was fired on February 22, 1967. The band's self-played album Headquarters debuted at #1, proving they could play. But the pre-Fab 4 label followed them for decades. Number 6, the Archies.
Baby, I was down and out.
After the Monkees fired him, Don Kirshner told Billboard magazine something that changed pop music history. "Screw the Monkees. I want a band that won't talk back." So he created the Archies, a cartoon band from a Saturday morning TV show. No real members. No rebellion possible. Total control. Singer Ron Dante voiced Archie. Tony Wine sang Betty and Veronica's parts, including that unforgettable "I'm gonna make your life so sweet." Dante was contractually forbidden from revealing his identity. Sugar Sugar became the #1 song of 1969, the only time a fictional band has ever claimed that honor. It spent 4 weeks at #1 in the US and 8 weeks at #1 in the UK. Think about that. In the year of Woodstock, the year of Abbey Road, the year the counterculture peaked. The biggest song in America was by characters from a Saturday morning cartoon. Kirshner's promotion team reportedly played the song for radio programmers without revealing who performed it. Only after they committed to airplay were they told the truth. The man fired for manufacturing the Monkees became even more successful manufacturing musicians who literally didn't exist. Number 5, Steely Dan.
In the morning, you go running.
Now here's where this story gets complicated, because Steely Dan didn't hide anything. Donald Fagen and Walter Becker started as a touring band, but gradually replaced every member with session players. Becker explained it simply. Once I met bassist Chuck Rainey, I felt there was no need for me to be bringing my bass guitar to the studio anymore. By 1974, they stopped touring entirely and became a studio-only duo. Their album Aja used nearly 40 different musicians on just 7 songs. Gaucho used 42 session players, with some tracks requiring 40 or more takes. Drummer Jeff Porcaro recalled, "From noon till 6, we'd play the tune over and over again. All they were going for was the drum track. So why include them? Because Steely Dan represents the honest version of what everyone else was hiding. They proved you could use session musicians and maintain artistic integrity, if you were upfront about it. They won multiple Grammys. They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Nobody questions their authenticity because they never pretended to be a band." Number 4, Toto.
Meet you all the way.
Toto is the mirror image of everyone else on this list. Jeff Porcaro, Steve Lukather, David Page, Steve Porcaro, these were the session musicians everyone else hired. They kept running into each other at recording dates and finally said, "Why don't we start a band?" Their session credits are staggering. On Michael Jackson's Thriller, the best-selling album of all time, Porcaro played drums on Beat It and Human Nature. Lukather played the rhythm guitar that drives Beat It. Steve Porcaro co-wrote Human Nature. Porcaro also played on Pink Floyd's The Wall, Dire Straits, Madonna's Like a Prayer. Lukather has appeared on over 1,500 albums. When Toto released Toto 4 in 1982, featuring Africa and Rosanna, they won 6 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year. The Invisible Musicians finally got their names on the cover. Jeff Porcaro died August 5th, 1992, at just 38. Number 3, Martha Wash.
So strike it up, nobody's gonna let you down.
This isn't about a fake band. This is about stolen credit. In 1989, Italian house group Black Box hired Martha Wash to sing demo vocals. Then they kept her vocals on 6 album tracks, including Everybody Everybody, while hiring French model Catherine Quinol to lip sync in videos and concerts. Wash sued, they settled. Then C+C Music Factory paid her reportedly less than $1,000 for demo vocals, including the iconic Everybody Dance Now hook. Singer Zelma Davis lip-synced Wash's voice on Saturday Night Live and in the music video. Wash wasn't credited on the album. She was listed as one of 6 background vocalists. The dimension of body image discrimination was explicit. Wash was allegedly replaced because producers considered her appearance unmarketable. Her lawsuits resulted in federal legislation making vocal credits mandatory on all albums and music videos. Martha Wash changed the law, but she never got the fame her voice deserved. Number 2, Milli Vanilli.
Don't be shy when you're holding my hand, cause as time goes by, you got to understand.
This is the scandal you remember. The one that made headlines. The one that ended in tragedy. In 1987, German producer Frank Farian spotted Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan, 2 photogenic young dancers, and offered to make them multi-millionaires. They reportedly signed on January 1st, 1988, without legal advice. The real singers were Brad Howell, John Davis, and Charles Shaw. Rob and Fab never entered the recording studio. 5 consecutive top 5 singles. 3 reached number 1. Girl, You Know It's True. Sold 7 million copies in the US. The Cracks appeared July 21st, 1989 at Lake Compounce theme park. A backing track malfunction caused the vocals to skip, looping Girl, You Know It's over and over. Rob Pilatus panicked and ran off stage. He later said, "I knew right then and there, it was the beginning of the end." On February 21st, 1990, they won the Grammy for Best New Artist. Fab Morvan recalled, "It may have looked like joy and happiness, but inside, it was pure confusion." On November 14th, 1990, Frank Farian held a press conference and confessed everything. On November 19th, 1990, the Recording Academy revoked their Grammy, the first and only time in history a Grammy has ever been rescinded. Class action lawsuits made an estimated 10 million buyers eligible for refunds. Rob Pilatus spiraled into depression, substance abuse, multiple arrests. On April 2nd, 1998, he was found dead in a Frankfurt hotel room. Accidental overdose. He was 32 years old. Milli Vanilli didn't invent this practice. They just had the terrible luck of getting caught in an era that suddenly demanded authenticity. Before I reveal number one, think about everything you've heard today. Think about the common thread running through every story. Number one, The Wrecking Crew.
She goes.
The Wrecking Crew isn't a band. That's exactly why they're number one. This loose collective of 30 to 40 Los Angeles session musicians played on an estimated 35,000 recording sessions. The same names appear on virtually every song we've discussed today, and hundreds more you thought were played by the artists on the covers. Hal Blaine played on 40 number one hits, 150 top 10 hits, 6 consecutive Grammy Record of the Year winners from 1966 to 1971. For Simon & Garfunkel's The Boxer, they reportedly flew him to New York to play a single drum hit, that thunderous boom on Leela Lai. Carol Kay created the bass hooks for Sonny and Cher's The Beat Goes On, the Monkees hits, and the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. She claims she earned more money than the president. Glenn Campbell played guitar on Frank Sinatra sessions and Beach Boys recordings before launching his solo career. Leon Russell moved to Los Angeles at 16 and played on records by the Beach Boys, Rolling Stones, and Bob Dylan. Tommy Tedesco played guitar on TV themes including The Twilight Zone, Bonanza, MASH, Batman, and Mission Impossible. If you grew up in the 1960s, these people created the soundtrack of your life. The song playing when you got your driver's license, the song at your senior prom, the song on the radio the first time you held someone's hand. They were invisible, uncredited, unknown. Carol Kay said it best. It really was the studio musicians who created most of the 60s golden oldies, not only in our performances, but our creativity. Detroit had their own version, the Funk Brothers at Motown, led by the legendary James Jamerson, who played on 23 Billboard #1 hits. Nashville had the A-Team. Every major recording center had its invisible army. The 2008 documentary The Wrecking Crew took 7 years to clear music licensing. It finally reached theaters in March 2015, earning 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was selected for the U.S. National Film Registry in 2025. Most of these musicians died without recognition. James Jamerson reportedly had to scalp a ticket to Motown's 25th anniversary celebration for music he created. The great paradox of this story is that the music was never fake. Hal Blaine's drumming on Be My Baby, James Jamerson's bass line on My Girl, Carol Kay's groove on Good Vibrations. These were performances of extraordinary artistry by musicians whose faces you never saw. The deception wasn't in the quality, it was in the packaging, who got credit, who got famous, who got rich, who got forgotten. For those of us who bought these records with our allowance money, who wore out the grooves playing them over and over, who fell in love to these songs and remember exactly where we were when we first heard them, the revelation cuts both ways. There's a sting of betrayal. The poster on your wall lied to you. But there's also something else. The songs you loved were played by some of the finest musicians who ever lived. Musicians who could walk into a studio, see a piece of sheet music for the first time, and create magic in a single take. Musicians who invented the sound of an entire generation, your generation, and never asked for applause. The next time you hear one of these songs on an oldie station, listen differently. Listen for Hal Blaine's Perfect Pocket, Carol Kaye's melodic bass, the Wrecking Crew's invisible fingerprints on the music that shaped who you became. The songs that defined your youth were real. The talent was real, the emotion was real. The only thing that was fake was the name on the label. If this changed how you hear the music you grew up with, hit subscribe. We're here to tell the real stories behind the songs you love. Drop a comment telling me which revelation shocked you most and whether it changes how you feel about these records. Until next time.